Yeah, so how does Corbeau manage measuring, frankly, whether or not we're getting traction with some of these new standard operating procedures, these new experimental ways of working and living? And to be frank, right now, everything is so much in shift, in flux, that we've not yet invested in quantitative metrics just yet. Okay. Now, anecdotally, certainly one could say, oh my gosh, we have been able to execute that 8-day window that's front loaded with the mechanics, for example. Right. And so I would argue we're more self-actualized. I literally have gotten feedback from stakeholders and sponsors saying, wow, thank you for, bringing me options, not bringing me status. Right. So, and it didn't matter if it was red, yellow, or green. Being able to more effectively understand how what one stream in a project is doing might affect other streams. Being able to communicate priorities, because usually timeliness of that communication matters. Maybe that one stream didn't know another stream was waiting on them despite a stand-up, right? So just having that second layer of insight anecdotally has been effective. We measure it, I would say, subjectively, not objectively, in our team huddles around the experimentation with these tools and after action reviews of these trial periods, full lessons learned experiences, if you will. They're almost like mini projects internally for us. What tools work and in what way, what do we need to improve? And it's not about necessarily improving the agents or the code or those automated processes alone. It's how the humans fit into that. And we had talked earlier in this conversation about kind of the pain in the old way of even just doing invoices or the accounting or team huddles or self-training. All of that is in flux. So I'm going to use that as sort of an excuse where we've not quantitatively measured these things. I would argue that anecdotally, things are in fact slower for us as humans. We spend a lot of time talking about how this impacts us, ideating how we might be able to integrate these opportunities. But I think we all have a high energy around realizing once you play with some of these agents or a co-work tool, in fact, one of the greatest dangers is I can do more, and I have to be careful about, it used to be, I won't have time for that. Now it's like, oh, I could squeeze this one more thing in. I could squeeze this one more thing in. And we have to be careful about that because it can break the experiments for the other team members. You end up becoming an isolated pillar. I could have my project management delivery team doing things in my project success academy, curriculum teams or teachers and educators doing one thing, and they'll get that cool tool and they're just going to be heads down, as I do. I'm guilty of this, going down a tangent. That one I can measure because I can quantitatively see what people have been working on. You just look at email, chat trails, code that's out there and timestamps. And it's not because we micromanage, but I can see when people start to get into, like I do, in silo mode. And that's been our greatest challenge. Is it's really easy to be getting better and better and better at your craft, right? Like maybe like in basketball, you could be getting yourself to LeBron James level. But if you don't bring your team with you, you're not going to win that championship. And that's the hardest part of what we're doing. And I know that's not what the question was asking. The question is fishing for how can we get other people to measure this painful trailblazing experience? And I got to be honest with you, we are deep in the mud. I am up to my neck, right, wading through the Oregon Trail, trying to get through the muddy rivers and get us across the wilderness to this glorious coastal destination. And we're just not measuring it right now because we are first journey. Okay, so if I understand the question, what we're exploring is, okay, great, you've got all these tools. You have all these cars in your parking lot. You've got an all-wheel drive, Jeep for off-road and rock climbing with a winch and all of that, and you've got a Ferrari, right? So you can run it on the track. And I think the question is, aside from, okay, you've installed tools, you've thrown people a user manual, hey, I don't know, ChatGPT, figure out how to use this tool and go be better, right? That's not what Corbeau is about, and certainly not for our clients, and certainly not for our team members, and absolutely not for our Project Success Academy students. Okay, there are so many tools out there that it's the specific application, right? If I'm in healthcare, I may or may not need the same SOPs and tools that obviously I'm going to need in construction, right, or tech or in between. And I know that people anecdotally we get that, but when you step into a restaurant and there's 4,000 items on the menu. That's what AI feels like to us as advisors, because we do all the dirty work of experimenting with all of these tools. What is their security? What is their safety? Their resiliency, SOC compliance, use case. Does it really make my job better, faster, smarter, safer? Or is it just a tool because it's really kind of cool and it's a gimmick, right? Is it trendy or is it a trend, right? So we invest in actually our people, our teams, deliberately. We have a fractional portion of our responsibilities to sandbox or play with these and look for genuine use case. We actually do have a technology background, so we're very aware of concepts behind enterprise architecture, TOGAF, tech debt, and all of that. And we don't like the idea of having 1,000 different disparate tools, and then you've got to manage finances and patching and licensing and training users. So we tend to look for things that add value immediately, right? It's not always sexy, but sometimes the soccer van for the kids is the right car to buy, right? And so you can add a stereo in that van, right? That's really cool or trick, or you can add an entertainment center for the kids in the back seats. So we tend to lean towards an anchor solution. And the solution, mind you, is training, proper use case, job specific, like job change impacts, like awareness of how your job was and where it can be and how efficient. Back to that conversation about my day was all mechanics. Now this part can be mechanized, but you need to know how and why it's specific to me as a project manager, a business analyst, an org change management specialist, an executive or a director, an accountant, whatever that is. So having the right minivan sometimes, then adding maybe bells and whistles into it, and then compressing what you can from a mechanical standpoint and training and upskilling you so that, like when you wake up in the morning and you ask Alexa, tell me about my day, what's the temperature, is it raining, do I need an umbrella, do I have a dentist appointment? That's the beginning of your day with your tools. And then you're using it as a coworker so that you can be a more self-actualized professional. And so your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, are going to change. And this is the growth we're going through as an organization. We are genuinely transposing old stand-up rituals that took a lot of time. They were valuable, and we still do them within reason. But with the automation and compression, we're spending time on, does this tool work? How do I change my SOP? Do I still need these extra meetings? How can I work effectively asynchronously? How can I work from home? We're trying to integrate technology into really almost, I would say, evolved, but almost revolutionized. Not to say that it's some grandiose revolution, but it really is a departure from your traditional punch the clock at 8 a.m., punch the clock at 5 p.m., because the technology has given us flexibility, stability, reliability that even humans couldn't do. But we also have to do this the slow way. And here's the last reason why. When we implement all these cool tools, those checkpoints of QA, AI makes mistakes. AI does what humans tell it to do. We have compliance, we have ethics, we have QA, we have audit, we have Sarbanes-Oxley, if that's those control points, right? Depends, but you can't have, for example, the same person who sends the invoice, cut payment to the invoice, right? So separation of duties, segregation of duties, all of those still need to be in place. And today they still need to be done by humans. Stand up so that we understand what priorities are as humans still needs to happen. But we are starting to play around with these agentic tools such that I can start a training package at 5 p.m., go to dinner, have a healthy sleep at night, wake up in the morning, and there it is waiting for me. We're going to come to a point where Corbeau and all project managers, all enterprises, you're going to be able to produce faster than you can release. And that's because the human checkpoints still are going to need to happen. And that's where SOPs are changing, right? Which QAs can I legally and ethically and properly automate? Where do the humans fit in? And so I think the traditional 9 to 5, Monday is invoice day, Wednesday is training day, that mold may not work anymore. And so that's what we're experimenting with. I hope that answers your question. I mean, our Project Success Academy by Corbeau, prided ourselves on being one of the early um, project management AI orientation training organizations. And it sounds like, oh, they grabbed a buzzword and they taught me how to use ChatGPT. No, that coursework was bring a real project. It was project lifecycle and methodology. It was solving real world problems, and it had a capstone whereby students left that knowing, oh, this is where and how I use ChatGPT and what's protected and private and what goes into the public LLM and all of the disciplines with it, right? It wasn't another quick and dirty, and I'm not disparaging other providers, recorded video about how to log into GPT and create a risk log, right? So I wanted to be fair about it, but that course is deprecated, right? So when I think about the future of LMS or learning experiences, it needs to be just-in-time learning. This concept of taking courses is going to start to wane a little bit. There's always going to be a place for that, where you just take a recording and you take the quiz and you prove that you checked the box and maybe you learned a few things. I think LMS is moving with agentic help and technology innovations, where it's going to be a mix between an expert or a specialist being your instructor and an AI buddy. And it's going to be just in time. So I'm going to take a course, maybe because I need the certification, but more likely because my boss asked me to do this. I got 3 weeks to figure it out. I'm going to watch a YouTube video. Oh, and there's a course on this with a specialist that can work with me and an AI chat buddy. So I can work with the chat asynchronously and then attend maybe an office hour or have, a group chat or things like that. So I think it's going to be some combination that facilitates our need as humans for that social connection, right? It'll keep that part. But I think the learning and even the learning validation, proof that I learned it, is going to move beyond watch recording and take a quiz. It's going to be chatbot buddies. It's going to be interactive. One thing that I like that we're experimenting with is we're stealing the concept of stitching your homework, right? I need to submit a video showing that I did my project or whatever to the instructor, and it's asynchronous. It's not because I want you to check a box, because I want to give you feedback. Hey, did you think of using this tool instead of that tool? You would have gone faster. And I noticed you're missing this data field in your risk log. Not having a trigger date is absolutely critical to linking it to your project schedule items. All of those little nuances that make you a better practitioner, I think, are the future of LMS, is a mixture of a human specialist, right? The social group interaction, and then agentic for all the immediate needs, like quick YouTube videos and an agentic question and answer buddy. I hope that answers your question. I think that's where LMS is going. The question is, how has Corbeau's definition of AI ready changed? And that's fascinating, because one of Corbeau's service offerings is the Project Success Academy. And we even have had an entire curriculum, a series of courses for AI readiness specific to the project management world. And that course was tailored to, you bring in your real life projects. By the end of the course, you do a capstone exercise where you get to kind of use your standard sort of chat-based experiences to solve problems and accelerate your project management outcomes, whether it be risk identification and management, all the way to scope management or generating a simple dependency-driven schedule. That was the old days, right? Where it was almost like AI, even just a few years ago, with the chat GPTs, that chat-based experience was like a Google Advanced, where it could consolidate thoughts and questions and queries. And we talked about how to bake that into being a faster, more efficient, more aware project manager. All that's gone. And with great rapidity, we're now moving towards the fully adopted use of agentic AI. Almost like AI is your coworker, to commandeer a term Anthropic uses, right? Their product, Claude Cowork, for example, is really an exemplary illustration of how we've operationalized the use of AI in our day jobs. And the notion is, in the old days, right, as a project manager, you would work very, very hard in your industry and you would learn the craft about discipline and framework and scheduling and dependencies. Or if you're an agile, all the proper lingo and terminology and ceremonies, and you would manage it on Kanban boards or burn down charts and all of those things, or you would manage a Gantt chart with illustrated dependencies. And we would be asked to, in our industry, we'd be listening to subject matter specialists and we'd be listening to our sponsors and our team members, and we'd coordinate integrations and make sure that it's a well-oiled machine. And that took a lot of work. It was spreadsheets and meetings. I mean, for most of us, it was you would coordinate conversations and you'd have risk planning and responses ready to go. And you'd have to talk to sponsors, and you're always trying to figure out status. And we got really good at that as project managers. I think we could do the PMI's project management body of knowledge. We could do that framework pretty effectively. But it would take a lot of time. And so within an 8-hour day, for example, you're doing those meetings and risk explorations and status updates and scheduling and integration conversations. You get to the end of the day and you're like, I don't really have a lot of room to do anything around maybe what if scenarios or strategic direction or verifying that it's truly aligned to the value of the project. Well, now we can take that time box with agentic AI, right? And I can compress all the quote paperwork and mechanics, right? With the right setup, something like a coworker can scan your inbox, your calendar for the day, kind of like a lot of people use Alexa, what's the weather today? What's my calendar today? That part is all set up for you. So you know how to be an effective day ahead of time. It can pre-write effective and relevant agendas. It can read the schedule and the RAID log. It can verify whether or not certain meetings are in scope or not, right? So the mechanics of what we used to do about getting status from folks or having conversations about, hey, data team, I know you're busy with this, but if you prioritize setting up this new environment, the test team can kick off on time next week. In the past, we had to make that a very manual process, or we didn't know, they didn't know why it was important to stop what they're doing, which is very important, to help another team that has something just as important. Those conversations are now more available to me because AI is doing that as an agentic source, going out and being aware of what's going on in our integrated project. And now as a project manager, I'm not having sort of the hunt, find, and aggregate conversations. I'm having that, oh, well, what if we move testing back a week and we brought up training first so people truly have a chance to kind of play around with it and sandbox and understand what's going on? Or what if, oh, we forgot about holiday scenarios. I get to do a lot more what if. I get to be what I call the executive's best friend, right? I'm at their right hand. And instead of an executive asking, hey, Ben, the project manager, can you just give me a list in the Microsoft project file of everything that's late? Well, he, she, or they have learned that's the question to ask because they couldn't ask what they really want to know. Am I going to make this key milestone so I can tell the regulators, the shareholders, my boss that we are or not going to make it, and what that means for our company strategy or our regulatory obligations, right? Are we compliant? They need to understand, is the objective still protected? Is it still achievable? What they learned over time, because we were always in the mechanics as project managers, is they could only ask me what I knew, and then we'd start to formulate together probabilities if we had time and strategies, and they had to kind of do mechanical work themselves. But now instead, all of that's aware to me, and I can come to them with, hey, by the way, I could save us 2 weeks if you do X, Y, Z. Or hey, we are going to be late on this milestone, but if we change our approach, I can make the next milestone come in faster. I can now have those conversations, and I can be the project success practitioner I've always wanted to be. A project manager is like a cook. I was able to cook and do the mechanics very, very well, but I wasn't focused on making this amazing meal, so to speak, or even being able to say, hey, I know how to cook this. Do you want your meal to be this way, or do you want your meal to be that way? If that makes sense. And so training from the Project Success Academy is all around making that coworker concept a core part of being a project success practitioner. And then, of course, our Corbeau consultants not only learn it, they teach it and they live it, right, with our clients. So we think this is a transition using AI to a world of self-actualized professionals, right? Less an analogy I had used in the past, and I'll end with this, was back in the day, we used to scrub our laundry in a bucket with some lye or soap against a washboard. And somebody said, can I mechanize that? And then suddenly I could get back to whatever the intent of cleaning the wardrobe was, safety, wellness, right? What if I had to do it for surgical gowns, right? So we found better, faster, smarter ways to do the mechanics. They're are and have been project management mechanics that beyond our imagination can now be automated. Having it go out and scan a 3,000 line project schedule and identify risks in the network and relationships, identify because of things in the news, possible risks from environmental factors, has changed the game. And we're not just project managers, we're not just cooks, right? We're strategists, we're chefs, right? So we're project success practitioners. So I hope that answers your question.